Alright, so this is a short little update on my Growatt inverters. As you all know, I put these guys in March of 2020. I have 3 of them now. I added a third one in August of last year. So this unit here, 2066, is one of the original 2. This 28C is one of the other original 2. One thing I've disliked about the Growatt website is their tracking of solar stats on this particular page is just kind of all over the place. The rest of these numbers all seem to be pretty close to legit, but this number here has never really made much sense. That's not really a major issue because when we go to the energy tab in a moment, I'll show you that it actually logs everything there correctly. But that's one of the reasons why I recently added Solar Assistant, so that I could get a little bit more detailed logging. And quite honestly, for a lot of folks, I would say it's by far the cheaper approach to getting good monitoring of these versus having to buy one of the Shine USB dongles to access the Growatt website data. This one is the newest one. This is the guy that went in August of last year, and so far during the time that I've had them, they've shut down one time for low battery. There was a power outage and it hit the battery low point before I was able to start up the generator, and they'd actually shut down due to low battery. Once the generator kicked on and started charging things, it kicked right back on. But otherwise, I've not had any issues. They have continued to run extremely well. So let's go to our energy page. Now, the one thing that they did apparently change in here is it used to be you could go to your calendar and you could choose pretty much any day since the time that you had installed them, and it would pull up the energy information. It looks like their website now only keeps the last 3 months of data, of the high detailed data. It does keep the aggregate for the months and years, but if you're looking at day-to-day information, you can no longer go back years to see what you were doing, what you got that before. I know previously, last time I probably looked at this, I don't know, January or February of this year. I could pick a date in 2021 and it would give me these solar curves as to what the solar was that particular day, but that appears to no longer be the case. Maybe it'll come back, but something tells me it probably won't. That's another reason to have something like Solar Assistant, so that you can actually see that stuff for the long term. But in here, you can see today is the 3rd of September, and you can see here's my power curves as out throughout the day. This drop off here is basically when my batteries were full, and so it basically cut off the output of the one inverter so that the loads were more balanced to what was coming in for solar until the batteries started dropping in voltage again. Go to here, you can see the days. You notice on the first, and if I go to this one, a couple days back here, there was a couple days of data missing from a couple of inverters. That was when I was connecting up Solar Assistant, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But otherwise, this guy logs everything, month by month by month, and you can go back and look and see, what's been putting out what. Go to the month. You'll see here we are in September. Here we are for the year. The recent high angle arrays that I'd added in, those were actually to this new inverter, and so those have boosted its output. In the wintertime, those don't get very much because it's the sun is so low, and where they're at, they end up with a lot of shade. Or with the 2 newer arrays that I've added to that, they'll probably pick up a bit more this coming winter. But you can see, for August, though that particular inverter generated almost 200 kilowatt hours versus my other two, 327 and 314 kilowatt hours generated. That's my dog being silly in the background. So overall, I've not really had any complaints about them. I have opened up the covers on them one time and blown them out with a little bit of compressed air, just dusting them. But that was pretty much all the maintenance that I've had to do. I check, the screw tension on any of the terminals and stuff about once every couple months, just to make sure everything is tight. It's a good idea to probably check that about once a week for about the first month after you install things, just to make sure nothing has come loose, nothing's getting loose. And then after that, just check it. You can check it once a quarter. If you have some sort of thermal camera, that's also a good idea to point it at things in order to see if anything's getting hot. There's a lot of little thermal camera add-ons that you can attach to your phone for not a whole lot of money, and when you're dealing with electrical, it's good to have those things just to see if you're getting hot spots. Something doesn't have a good connection, better to catch it before you have a fire. So these are the years. So here's 2020 when they first went in. Again, March of 2020, and I didn't have, when I got these units, it wasn't known that you had to have one of the USB Shine adapters for each inverter. Initially they thought you could just plug it into one and it would pull the data from both, but that's not the case. Each one has to have their own USB. And so if I go back into months, you can actually see this is 2020, and you can see here's where this was me switching them back and forth between the two units, but until I got the second adapter in July of that year, it was only recording the data from the first one. So there's probably 300-400 kilowatts of electricity that was generated at the beginning of that year that wasn't accounted for, but then connecting it as it goes on through. So here's 2021, and basically each year the total has increased as I've added more solar panels, more arrays, changed some things around, and then in August of last year adding in the third inverter. That third inverter, I basically have that powering for the most part, and since I'm in the south, we've got dehumidifiers that probably run about 2/3 of the year due to the humidity in this part. And so that mostly runs those guys, as well as a small window AC unit in my laundry room that kind of keeps the humidity and temperature under control out there, and a couple computers in another room. So that unit, however, is also tied to my generator. That particular my generator is a 120 volt generator, so it can't supply the 240 volt split phase ones, but it can supply that particular inverter, so it's on a transfer switch with it. So if there's an extended power outage, that one can basically use to charge the battery bank and supply power for all of the inverters. It really has worked pretty well. Here's 2023 again, and yeah, so the overall few things that I will point out is probably at least once a month I'll get a day where one or two of the units will drop offline in this Growatt dashboard. They usually come back online on their own within a day or so. Otherwise, I've had to remove the USB and just reconnect them. I don't bother with using the screws to secure those USB pieces in there anymore, simply because the USB slot itself holds them in just fine, and that makes it much easier to pull and reset them. Since I'm using Solar Assistant now, and if you plug them directly into it, they cover up the USB port that the Solar Assistant uses. I actually have the little Shine dongles on some 1 foot long extender USB extender cables, so that they're off to the side, and that frees up the port. So a couple other bits is, if you're in this app, hold it over the little exclamation. That'll give you some of your current stats. That'll give you your voltage that's coming in from your PV array, your battery voltage, the charging current that it's delivering towards anything. If it, in the case of this, we're bringing in 91 watts, but we're discharging 1675 watts, so it's really not, doing anything in the way of charging right now. So after that, I added in Solar Assistant, and for this I went on Amazon. I bought the Orange Pi LTS, I believe is the one that they recommend. $60 some with the case and its USB power supply. And then I bought the Solar Assistant software from their website. Put that on a 32 gig micro SD card using the image process that they listed on their site. It was really easy. Popped that into that, turned it on. My laptop was immediately able to see the SSID from it after about 3 or 4 minutes of it being online, and I was able to log in, put in the SSID and password for my network, and bam, it's at that point it was talking to it. I then went ahead and set up my URL for this guy, and then went about connecting the 3 inverters to the Orange Pi. One thing I did discover in the process of that was that plugging in the 3 inverters, the newest inverter would see it every single time with no issue. I had that plugged into the USB 2 port on the Orange Pi. The other 2 inverters, I had those plugged in on the USB 3 ports, and it was very hit and miss as to it reading the data reliably from it. After that, I got a little Anchor USB 3 basically hub, plugged that into that USB 2 port, and plugged all 3 of them into the USB 2 port, and at that point it was able to see all 3 of them and pull the data from all 3 inverters very reliably. Overall, I say I like the layout and the functionality and the information that this is giving me. I will continue to use this and see how it works over the long term, but so far I've been pretty happy with it. Your basic dashboard, if you click on inverter, that takes you to this page, shows you each of the 3 inverters, shows you the internal temperatures. Not really sure what the bus voltage it's pulling it from, because these are all 120 volt, but maybe something internally works at that, but I am not sure. Load percentages are here. This updates much more rapidly than the Growatt dashboard does. The Growatt dashboard only pulls information about once every 5 minutes. This, as you can see through the numbers, is updating quite a bit more frequently. I believe its logging is based on a 1 minute interval, but the actual stats on here seem to be a little bit faster than that. You've got your information on your battery voltage, things of that sort. The other nice part is it also is able to see what the firmware is on these inverters, so you're able to, if you needed to get support from it, you can actually go through that. It logs what the grid voltage is. It's kind of entertaining to actually see the fluctuations in the grid voltage throughout the day. Where I'm at, it seems to range between about 120 to about 124. Battery, I plan to add in one of the Victron smart shunts to my system, just so I have some better monitoring of what the battery's doing. But this is just pulling the battery information from the inverters themselves. So it shows you what the current voltage is, shows you what the current draw is, state of charge. At this point there's power being pulled from the inverter, from the batteries, versus going into the battery bank from the inverters. And the state of charge really doesn't, it's not very accurate, because basically it goes by what the inverter says. If it's above the voltage to switch back to the grid, then it just assumes it is 100%, and once it goes below that, then it drops to 50 or 75%. So again, having something like the Victron Smart Shunt in there to monitor that will probably give me much better stats as far as that goes. On your main home page, you've got how much load the 3 inverters are currently supplying, how much the battery is pulling from there, whether you're pulling power from the grid or not, how much solar is coming in. We're 5 p.m. at this point, so we're getting to the point where a lot of my stuff is shaded. But you can see, our peak here was a little over 6 kilowatts today, and then we're down here at around 887 watts, I guess it is right now. So you can also watch this is the battery power. This was the power that was going into the batteries as it was charging, and then as it got towards the point where it's needing to start pulling, and now this is the power that's coming back out of them. Charts are actually pretty handy. You come in here, you can check and change your the colors to more easily see which one is which. So you can go in here and choose that. So that's green for inverter 1. Leave inverter 2 yellow, and let's go blue. So now you can more easily see which one is which, and you can see on your little lines down there as to what's what. This is the total overall solar that came in, and then this is the power that came into each individual inverter. So my early morning array is the first one to get significant solar. And so you can see where as that is slowly coming up, and then we're at 1.3, 1.75 kilowatts by 9 a.m. in the morning, and basically staying at that range on until we hit basically starts to fall off at around 10:30 in the morning. So that's the first big boost into the system. Then the second inverter is that's the next big array that's picking it up. That one there is up to about 2 kilowatts by that point, and the third array that's more shaded at that point is now 1 kilowatt. So this really helps kick things off in the morning, and then you can see where the curve falls off. So at inverter 1 it dropped off there, but the third inverter that gets late in the day, it's able to carry the curve much further. Scrolling down through here, you've got battery voltage, which is also nice. This is showing you where your low points were, and then as you're charging back up. I have my since I have some of the lights in my house powered by a small Victron inverter that's directly connected to the battery banks. I've done that mainly because there are certain LED lights that like to flicker some particularly when the Growatt inverters are under heavy charging. That's the one thing I will say that is a little annoying about the Growatts. I'm not sure if there's a way to fix that, but I have seen that will cause some flickering in certain brands of LED lights or incandescent bulbs. Even there seems to be a little bit of noise in there that causes those to flicker. I also have that Victron set up tied directly to the battery bank, so that if I have to shut the the inverters off, I still have overhead lights that I can use to work on things without having to try and set up work lights and things like that. It's a good backup as far as that goes, and that Victron puts out a very, very smooth power to the lights, so I've never had any issues as far as flickering off of that goes. You can see your AC output voltage, and this is, just the kind of normal variation throughout. Grid voltage, and this is what I was saying, you can see where, the grid moves up and down by a good bit throughout the day. Grid frequency stays relatively stable, and then this is the load power, and so again, change the colors of these. So this is the total, so we'll make this one green. We'll make this one red, and we'll make this one orange. And so this is the combined that everything was being supplied by the inverters. And then these lines down here, you can see these are the individual inverters, what they were contributing to their loads. So, my system is pretty balanced out. I don't have a huge amount of imbalance pulling from one inverter to the other. So there's not big giant spikes. They're all pretty evenly balanced across it. I am powering basically everything in my house except for the hot water heater and my electric stove and electric oven. Everything else that we use on a day-to-day basis is basically pulling from these inverters. We have a heat pump dryer. I have a high efficiency washing machine, a Fisher Paykel, that's been amazing. I've gotten 15 plus years out of that thing with various different parts that need to be replaced over the years. But all of those things are being drawn from these inverters every single day. I have 3 chest freezers, a normal standard full-size fridge. It's not, it's energy efficient, but it's nothing, it was a $700 or so fridge when I bought it 8 or 10 years ago. It's, nothing insane as far as that goes. And then all of my heat pump air conditioning units, as well as that one window unit, are on there. So I've got 3 heat pump mini split units, a 9,000 BTU unit, a 12,000 BTU unit, and an 18,000 BTU unit. And those 3 are all supplied by the 2 inverters that are in the split phase. So they do an amazing job of keeping everything running without any issues. Come over here to totals, and so you can see where I put this system online on the 27th and started getting it connected up, so it was actually seeing all the data from everything. And you can see where on days where it was heavy rain and overcast, as we had the tropical storm Idalia remnants come over the top of us, we were pulling quite a bit of power from the grid and not exactly getting a whole lot of solar. I mean, that day we had 4.7 kilowatts total for the day, and we pulled 60 kilowatt hours from the grid in that particular day. But on other days where we've got good amounts of solar, you can see here where we only use 27 kilowatts from the grid, or 24 or 25 kilowatts from the grid. We discharge a good bit from the batteries, and we put 17 kilowatt hours into the batteries. The charting for this is nice, and I like the breakdown of this better than what I see in the Growatt. So it's it's definitely an improvement as far as that goes. Again, it'll be interesting to see how the breakdown and stuff of this is over the long haul. But so far, I've been really happy with what this is, especially for the price, because basically buying the Orange Pi myself, buying the SD card and the software from Solar Assistant is not a whole lot more expensive than just one of those Shine USB dongles is. but it basically provides a lot of the same information in a little bit more usable way. You can come in here and apparently set some output sources and things of this sort. Haven't really messed with this, so can't really tell you much about it. Configuration on here just allows you to set your various different things. But overall, gotta say the Growatts have been worth the investment in them. Based on our power rates here, they've generated some $3,000 worth of electricity in the roughly 3 years that I've had them, and so that more than paid for what I've put into the inverters themselves. I've obviously spent more than that on battery bank and solar panels, but given the deals that I got on all of those, at the progress that they're making right now, everything that I have invested in this system would probably be completely paid for in about another 2 years. So overall, for what they were at the time that I got them, they have been really really worth it. I will say that the downside to these particular Growatt inverters compared to a lot of the newer inverters at this point is the fact that you can only handle a maximum of 150 volts coming into the MPP charge controllers. So that means having to do more combined, doing a combiner box of some sort, and versus a larger string. On the other hand, that also helps from a shading standpoint in that a little bit of shading on one corner of my array doesn't take down the output of the entire array. I can get these 2 or 3 panels shaded here, and the rest of the array continues to put out. It does mean that your cable runs to the arrays have to be of a larger gauge wire to handle the amount of amperage that's coming in. The arrays that I have are basically one of those 2 split phase setups. One of the inverters has a 4 kilowatt array into it of 16 250 watt panels. Again, those are used panels that I got from Santan Solar in basically I think December of 2019. And then the other inverter of that basically has a series of 300 watt panels on it. That's a little bit more than 4 kilowatts going into it. Those are all 60 cell panels that are going into that particular inverter versus the 72 cell panels that are going into the first one. So it's nice to be able to split those things apart so that the one's not dragging down the other. So for the first array, I have those are 2 panels in series, and then everybody else, and then each of those sets of series are basically combined together to feed that inverter. For the 60 cell panels that I'm feeding the other inverter with, those are 3 panels in series, and then all of those combined together to feed that inverter. For the third inverter, those I'm feeding with some Q-cell panels that I got from a friend of mine. They were pulled from a solar plant that because they have some defects with them. So if they were working properly, they'd be 400 watt panels, but since they have a bad weld somewhere in them, instead of putting out the roughly 40 volts, 37 to 40 volts they should be putting out, they put out about 27 volts. So they're basically putting out about half the power that they were originally designed to put out. On the other hand, they were 100% free to me, so I paid nothing for them. I traded him a couple things that I had no need for, and helped him out with another project, and he gave me a whole bunch of solar panels. So other than what I have in the racking to put those things up, which is maybe a couple $100, they're providing me a bunch of free power, and they're not the most efficient for the amount of space that they take up, but hard to beat free. So with that, that's pretty much it where we are for the units. Again, if you guys have questions on these units, feel free to send them my way. I try and answer the questions that I can on these. There are certainly a lot more inverter options these days than there were when I got them. So there's a lot of interesting choices out there. But I've been very happy with these units for what they've provided so far, and they've been 100% trouble free. Take it easy and have a good day.